What is going on, Cardano friends? Welcome to the channel. My name is Fareed, and in today's video, I've got a very special guest who is a fellow content creator within the Cardano space. That is Crypto Moose. How you doing today, Moose?
Good. How's it going? DappCentral. So I've been watching your content for a bit. Everything's looking good on your end. So where are you at right now?
So I am in the South US right now. We actually just had a cold front that just came in, and things are finally warming up. So I'm loving it right now. How about yourself?
Good. So I'm in Canada. So I don't know if I've even talked about that too much, but the weather is a little bit warmer now. But anyways, I'm still DCAing. I'm buying cryptos. How about you? I wanted to get some of your perspective on that as well. Have you been picking up any crypto?
Yes, I actually have. So right now, I think is an opportune time. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but yes, I've been picking up a ton of Cardano along the way and some other top coins, which include Ethereum and Bitcoin. Again, not financial advice, but I am investing for the long term, and I think that crypto will bounce back sooner or later.
Yeah, so I had that vibe too. I don't know exactly what your plan is, but for me, I think just long term over the next 5 to 10 years, I talk about it on the channel on Crypto Moose. But I think if you get in now, you'll be shocked 5 years from now. What do you think? Do you think 5 years from now, people will look back and they'll think to themselves, I should have got more?
Yeah, I think it happens every time. Obviously, we have the average person, right, who comes in towards the very top, essentially gets tired of all the pain on the way down, sells at the very bottom, which is actually when we're supposed to be doing all the buying. And then, whenever we get the next bull run, they feel like, man, I missed out, so I think it's inevitable. Like I said, it might take a year, it might take 2 years, might take 3 years, right? But I'm here for the long game. And I'm just picking it up right now because whenever ADA and all these other cryptocurrencies were at around, $2 or $3 or all time highs, I was like, man, I wish I would have got in. So now is that time that I should be getting in.
Yeah, I agree with that too. So, what are the top three projects that you like right now that you would DCA in yourself?
Right now, I would definitely say Cardano. That's probably a little bit biased of me to say, right? All of my content focuses on Cardano. But second to that, I would say probably the next two biggest assets, right? So these are no brainers, obviously, but I would say Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, granted, I think there are other layer two scaling solutions, i.e., Matic and Avalanche, which have done a lot in terms of partnerships and growth over the past few months. So I think those are all also pretty good options there.
Nice, nice. I was gonna say I got into Matic probably a year and a half ago. I like it
Mhm.
because you can get those APYs on the crypto.com app. So that's personally what I do. Again, I don't tell anybody to buy any specific digital assets, but this is just what I do. So I think people get a lot out of that, right? They see somebody showing what they're doing, and that's what I want to do, at least on my end. How about for you? What is your angle as a creator? What are you trying to do for others, or what is the goal of your channel?
So the goal of the DappCentral YouTube channel, which is right now just a YouTube channel, and that's actually a hint at a few things that are going to be coming down the pipeline within this next month of January. I'm going to be expanding and doing some new and different things, but the goal of the channel is honestly to educate, right? So I know that there's a lot of different channels that cover price action and that cover different aspects of crypto, but I try to stick with what I know personally, and that's with an educational background, right? So I try to leverage that as much as possible in order to essentially teach more people about crypto, and I hopefully can drive a little bit more adoptions towards Cardano, but within just blockchain as a whole.
I don't know about you, but I've been watching crypto content for quite a while. I remember, I don't know if you ever seen like Crypto Crow. I'm a pretty big fan of his. I've been consuming his content, watching him for a little bit. I get an honest vibe from you, which is, I'm pretty excited to be talking with you about these things because when I watch your content specifically, I think he's telling me the truth. He's not trying to angle anything or sell me anything, right? So I think that's a pretty big deal. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, I think transparency is key. And it's not just within crypto, but I think just as a whole, right? Obviously, with FTX, we saw things that were not so transparent and we saw how those things turned out. My thing is if you have an ulterior motive, sooner or later it will show. And like I said earlier, like I feel like if I'm able to educate people, it will come back, whether it's, you know, a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. But I'm not doing any of this for the sake of, you know, funneling people to, you know, go and sign up for exchanges or to go and, you know, essentially use my coupon code on some other platform to benefit from them, right? My thing is if I can provide value up front and people can see that, you know, that'll build a community on its own. I don't necessarily have to rely on some other third party essentially paying me in order for me to grow my community.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the topics I want to talk about in terms of content creation. So I've been doing videos for a while. Specifically, I have Crypto Moose. And one of my friends, he was telling me, he's like, dude, you're into crypto. Why don't you start a channel? And even for me, I think I was kind of hesitant because, you know, like, does it really matter? I don't code, but I do want to tell people the truth, at least what I think is the truth, be honest.
Hmm.
But I was going to say, do you think people realize how much time it takes to build content? Because I've been watching you for probably a good few months, and you're
Thank you.
putting out content all the time, right? Like, how do you manage that?
So I would say it's two things. Number one, it's just a ton of dedication. Like this is what I know I want to do. And so I had to sacrifice a lot of things, right? So I'm a pretty active person. I've had to kind of cut down on some of my time outside of my regular 9 to 5. So like gym time, you know, I've had to cut back on that. But then other things as well too. So I will say it takes a little bit of sacrificing, but it also takes a lot of dedication. And I'm sure you can attest to that, you know, even outside of the crypto content creation, you know, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we got started. You have other ventures which also require you to create content. And one thing that I learned very early on is that content creation is not easy, but the benefit that it provides to people is very impactful. And then content also lives forever, right? So if I spend the time now to, you know, put in 10 hours into a 5 or 10 minute video and people can benefit off of that, not only am I driving adoption towards blockchain, which is something that I believe in, but in addition to that, that content lives forever. So, you know, a year or two from now, I can come back and actually watch that video myself, right? And essentially refresh myself on something. Or if somebody else comes into the space a year or two from now, they can also learn from my content. So I think it's like it's a win-win for everybody. Obviously, there's a little bit of work that goes in up front. But in the long run, I'm hoping to help more people aside from myself. And it also forces me to learn as well, right? So when I create a video, I have to actually go out and learn about whatever protocol I'm talking about. And initially that was very difficult, but I've noticed that, you know, as time goes on, things get easier and I'm now able to crank out content a lot faster than I could very early on when I didn't necessarily know about all the projects that I'm talking about now.
Yeah, I like what you said there. You know what it reminds me of? Because I started shooting video, like video is my thing, right? Video
Hmm.
production. So I run a full service video production company in Canada. So I do like commercial videos, product videos for, you know, sometimes high end clients if I can. But what I noticed is the moment I started teaching, I started learning like from at a different level. So even crypto, I've been very quiet for 5, 6 years, but I got Dogecoin when you had to get it from a Chinese website, right? So I had to like translate different words and try to buy it. That's a whole other story. But point is that I think a lot of people have that block because if you can teach what you know, you really test what you do know. I don't know if you, I'm sure you've come across that,
Oh
right?
yeah. I
Because
mean,
crypto's
100%.
complex, right?
100%. Like I said, starting off very early on, I had to kind of stick to a narrow path. And honestly, and I'm now at the point where I'm expanding in terms of the projects that I cover. So as I mentioned before, you know, I try to do my best to cover the top projects within the ecosystem because a ton of these projects, as unfortunate as it is to say, will not make it, right? And it's not to spread FUD, but a lot of these need to be considered as startups. And so making sure that you're doing your due diligence and investing in learning about the protocols that are going to last is important, right? It would make sense for me to spend hours and hours learning about projects that I personally don't think will make it through the bear market. Because then again, you know, what purpose is that content going to serve? So that was another angle for myself. But I say all that to say, Now that I'm comfortable covering some of these top projects that I've been covering over the last 9 months, I'm now opening the gates to start talking about other projects now, which include the World Mobile Token. I'm also talking about Indigo Protocol, and even some of the top dexes within Cardano, right? And so as more projects come on, I'm hoping to broaden my horizon and just continue learning.
I like that. I like that. So, all right, how about we get into something a little bit different then? So we
Sure.
talked about your goals. We talked about the channel. I think people have a good vibe. There's something I want to know from your end. So what are one or two projects that you think are extremely undervalued and why? Specifically with Cardano. I don't know if you have maybe even that one that you're looking at and you're like, I just think this one's going to win, right?
Yeah. So I just want to open this up and just say I think almost all of the top projects within Cardano right now are undervalued. So I don't want this to come off the wrong way. But there's obviously, I think, some clear ones which are covered on my channel. So I've got to give a huge shout out to Cornucopias and MELD. I feel like both of those two projects are building right now and they're showing us exactly what they're capable of. And right now is an opportune time to essentially start honing in on those two particular projects. At least that's what I'm doing, right? Again, I urge people to do their own research, but taking a look at the team, right? Having created content with both teams, having actually seen the members of both of these teams in person, i.e., at Consensus, which took place in Austin, in Texas this past summer. And then also saw team members representing both of these projects at CNFT Con as well as Rare Bloom. I can say that I've actually built a personal relationship with them, right? So those are two projects that I personally think right now are building very heavily, and they've already shown us what they're capable of. And I have a lot of faith in them in the long run. Now, to add to that list, I think that when it comes to like dexes right now within Cardano, and again, I don't want me omitting anything being a sign that like I'm not following or that I don't believe in those other projects, but I have to give a huge shout out to the Minswap team. I think that they've done a really good job of building and listening to the community as well, right? So there's been a ton of different requests that come out and they do a really good job of listening to the community and then actually implementing and giving the community what they want. So I've got to give a shout out to them as well. And then on top of that, there is the Paribus team, another project that I cover as well on the channel. Another project that I'm also really excited about, I want to say is going to be the Indigo Protocol. Now they're bringing synthetic assets to Cardano, which is essentially going to give people price exposure to different tokens, right? So for example, if you're on the Cardano blockchain and you want access to Ethereum, right? And you don't necessarily want to leave the Cardano ecosystem, you can use the Indigo platform to purchase what they call iAssets. So those are just a handful there, man. I think, like I said, there's plenty of them within the ecosystem. So if I didn't, talk about a particular project here, don't take that as a bad sign. But those are just the ones that are on my personal radar.
I like that. A couple of those definitely I've been following very closely. I don't know a lot about World Mobile Token yet, but I think it's one of those things where I need to take weeks to really educate myself because I don't want to. I mean, if you're watching Crypto Moose now, it's very specific on certain projects, but that's because I don't want to lie and say that I do know what's going on, like with specific altcoins and so I like what you said about Minswap. I think one of the things I wanted to hit on too was, is there anything that you've been using
Mhm.
that really opened up your mind? Because for me, when you said Minswap, that hit a light bulb because I was playing around with Sunday Swap. So for those of you, if you don't know what a DEX is, it's a decentralized exchange. But that's the idea of crypto for the most part in finance. For Minswap, I've been using that exclusively for my trades. Are you using that for your trades as well, if that's a thing?
Yeah. So it's actually, I want to say right now, the most liquid DEX within the Cardano ecosystem. We had a big competitor, which was Wing Riders. Unfortunately, there was a hack. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, but that was the Nomad Bridge hack, which it didn't impact them directly, as in like the Cardano network was actually hacked, but they had some
Yeah.
funds which were on that bridge, which essentially impacted the amount of liquidity that was there after the fact because people, essentially moved their liquidity out of that deck. So that was an unfortunate situation, but I will definitely say, they're still building a great product. And they're actually going to be partnering up with MELD as a part of their testnet launch here. So it's not to say that they've lost any credibility. They're still a solid team of developers. But for myself personally, in terms of the most liquid DEX where I can go in and get a nice simple UI that also provides all the top tokens that I personally like, would have to be Minswap right now. So I use it to perform my swaps. Whenever I've got some fresh ADA in my wallet, I go in there and do a little bit of spending. So
I just did that yesterday. Actually, I have a friend he's working on his own crypto projects. Um, he literally laughs at me because I enjoy doing Cardano transactions. Like I love crypto, right? It's not for me. It's not just a financial thing. I want to know what's going on, right? Like I don't know. It's exciting to me. Let's talk about MELD. So MELD is
sure.
a lending borrowing protocol. I want to hear it from you, from your perspective. What is MELD and why are you excited about it?
So simply put, I would say, like you said, MELD is a lending and borrowing protocol building on Cardano. And what I love the most about MELD is the fact that they're bridging the gap between the traditional finance space and the blockchain or the DeFi space, right? So they're going to be allowing people to do crypto to crypto swaps, right? Which is something that has already been done quite well on Ethereum with the likes of Aave, Compound, and all these other DeFi protocols. But on top of that, an area that has not necessarily been touched, right, is the crypto to fiat side. So MELD is going to allow for people to essentially take their crypto, right? If they're long on crypto, they'll be able to leverage that crypto that they already own, right, as collateral. They'll be able to borrow against it and take out cash and then be able to use that cash to then actually perform what they want in the real world, right? So you can use that to essentially purchase a house, go grab a burger, go to a ball game, or even, buy trading cards with that, right? So
Yeah, sure.
it's really bridging the gap there. And once you're done, right, you can pay that fiat back and then you can unlock your crypto. So if you're long on ADA, if you're long on Ethereum, if you're long on Bitcoin and you own these assets already, you don't want to necessarily sell them, right? And then buy back in a later point. You want to just kind of hold them until they appreciate. So MELD is allowing people to do that. And then the very last kind of just the cherry on top here for me is that you're not going to be creating any tax events or taxable events, right? Because it's a loan. Once you pay it back, you're good, right? Whereas normally, if you cash out, you have to pay taxes. And then if you buy back in, then you've got to, literally kind of just take it at whatever the price of the market is. And then if you cash out after that again, you've got to pay taxes again, right? So I think the fact that it's bridging the gap between TradFi and DeFi is number one. And then, like I said, icing on the cake is the fact that it's not going to create a taxable event and it allows you to stay long on crypto, which hopefully as content creators like yourself and I are here, right? We're here for the long game and we're here for that appreciation over the long term.
Yeah, that's true. That's well said too. From my perspective, what I liked about MELD, because I got into the ISPO, so I'm going to be able to mint. I think I created three wallets, and then I had one of my buddies. I helped him set up a wallet. So I got in for the bank managers. I even got the diamond
Mm-hmm.
hands. So for
Mm-hmm.
those of you that don't know, the diamond hands, you got that airdropped if you were into the first epoch. So an epoch is every 5 days you get rewarded with the new supply. But in this case, an ISPO, you get rewarded with the new token, which was MELD, right? So that's over. Um, what were your thoughts on the art for the bank managers? I kind of wanted your thoughts because they just released the art. Do you think they look good now? Do you think they look like cooler than what they originally were going to do?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to just add a little bit of clarification there. As you mentioned, the Diamond Hands was rewarded to members within the community who participated in the ISPO. Now, I think that the Diamond Hands did require a little bit longer time for not for staking, but for delegating. I think it was 30
Yeah.
epochs, and then the bank manager was a single epoch. So just a minor clarification there. I think you
Yeah.
may have used the word Diamond Hand instead of bank manager. So not a big deal there, but
Oh, I
let me
probably
actually
did.
share
I
my
probably did.
no, completely fine. Um, I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm actually on the MELD website now showing the latest version of the Bank Manager NFT. So, as it pertains to my thoughts, man, I mean, it's crazy, right? Because I saw the very first iteration, which popped up very early on. I think there were a total of 4 different iterations, right? So, the very first one was very hyper realistic. They had, a guy, girl, They even had representations of Ken Oling, who was their CEO, and they had plans to also have representations of like Vitalik, who's like the kind of leading head, and Charles Hoskinson, for these different projects, right? So I was
Yeah.
super excited when they were first announced, and I was in love with all of the iterations of the art, right? Now they went through a second iteration because obviously, there was, I think, 42,000 participants as a part of the ISPO, which means that this is like one of the largest NFT collections that's going to be minting on Cardano. So you can imagine the amount of effort that would go into creating that many variations of an NFT. So when, they had an issue, not an issue, but whenever the first designer was not essentially able to kind of like follow through, it made sense to me, right? I kind of understood like that's a pretty heavy task to kind of deal with. Now that said, we did see like an additional iteration about, I want to say like 3 or 4 months ago, and I was also a fan of that. But this particular version that was just most recently released, man, I think it hits on a different note, man. So I want to say I like it, but I like it for different reasons than I like the original ones. Like the original ones, they were great, but they almost just kind of look like traditional game characters. Or like if you've ever played Fortnite, anything like that, it kind of looked like characters from those games. Which again, it's not a negative thing, but what we have now, I think, is a first. Like I have not seen a single other NFT that looks exactly like the MELD bank managers that we have right now, right? So the art style, how it's actually painted, and then the colors, man. It's not a traditional color scheme, right? Like the
Yeah.
original set was just human-like, very human-like. So we kind of knew what to expect, and you had something to kind of compare against, right? Like what you and I look like, because they looked like you and I. This one here is just kind of setting the bar at a completely different level
Yeah.
in the sense that like it's completely brand new, and so I will say I like it. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to finally being able to mint one and being able to use it on the MELD platform, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was pretty impressed with it too. Whoever did the art, incredible. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yes.
Now, if you were to get the gold one, would you sell it right away or would you hold on to it? That's in
That
what do you think it would go for? What do you think it would go for?
Yeah, no, let me explain to you what's going on in my mind. And obviously, this is purely speculation here, so don't take this, as financial advice. But we
Yep.
have the bank managers, right, which required staking for one epoch. Not too difficult to do. There's 40,000, 42,000 plus supply. Then you've got the diamond hands, right, which would have required about 30 times the effort, right, if you did the
Yeah.
bare minimum to earn the bank manager. So that increases the level, right, of it makes it that much harder to earn. That said, there's only 4,600 of those. So you've got 10x less the supply, right? So if you
For the
compare the
diamond
diamond
hand.
hands, yes, correct. You've got, 4,600 of those compared to the 42,000 of the bank managers. That said, right, your question was about the golden ones. If we're looking at that, you've only got 10 of those, right? So now you're looking at such a small set that anybody who understands what MELD is going to be building should be holding them for a very, very long time. Now, granted, right now, within the Cardano space and within the crypto space, it's a lot of us. I don't want to call us small fish, but if we're just being, nice, right? We're not institutions. We don't have institutional money. Once institutions come into the space, right, and they understand what MELD is doing and the benefits of these NFTs in terms of savings, right? Imagine being able to take $1 million loan from MELD, right, given that there's enough liquidity, and then being able to get a 1% reduction, right, in terms of the loan interest rate.
Yeah.
That comes out to a nice amount, right? So that at a very minimum, that math right there, hopefully it made sense. Really just kind of goes to show me like how useful this NFT can be in the future. So I would say right now, man, if I land a golden one, I'm not letting it go for years. I'm not even if I get offers, I'm not willing to let it go. And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna kind of end this on a separate note, right? I want to talk about another project here if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for sure.
Cardano NFTs, man, right? Like we look at the potential. If you're not familiar with the Ape Society, look at what they're doing there, right? They're a very simple project that launched. I believe the collection is about 7,000 apes, right? And they've got a cabin collection as well with about 10,000 cabins. Granted, those minted at a price of 100 ADA, okay? They were the
I
first
didn't know
project to
that.
break over, yeah, they were the first project to break over the 10K mark. And now they're sitting no problem at 10K. At the max, I believe they'd hit, it was 16 or 17,000 ADA. So again, it really goes to show you the power and the utility of NFTs once the eyes and the utility has actually been delivered. So right now, we haven't actually been able to get our hands on the bank managers. We haven't been able to actually use the diamond hands to get the feeless banking, right? But wait until that comes, and then wait until there's actual liquidity and there's an actual running protocol. I think that's when we're really going to see the benefit of the bank managers, especially the golden ones.
There you go. And that's why you're DappCentral, right? You have all this knowledge on this. I like that. So
Thank you,
you would
man.
say that you think in 5, 10, 20-year terms, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got a very long-term mindset. Now, granted, I'm not blind to the immediate price action, right? I'm sure that you're because you cover Bitcoin, right? I'm sure you're very well aware of the 4-year cycles, right? So that
Yeah.
said, like as opportunities present themselves, I will definitely be making sure to DCA out, just like I'm DCAing in right now, right? So I'm keeping that in mind. Obviously, when the next bull run comes, we'll be rewarded very greatly for all of the DCAing that we're doing now. And so that's literally what I'm doing is just keeping an eye on the market, watching the 4-year cycles, watching other content creators like CCV, Crypto Capital Venture. He does a really good job of charting things. And I'm even learning from people in that respect, right? So, like I said, I try to stay in my lane, but yeah, man, as soon as we see the next bull run, I'll definitely be making sure to take profits along the way. And whenever we get into the next bear, right, which might be ADA at $1, might be ADA at 50 cents, I'll DCA back in again. It's all part of the process.
When I first owned Bitcoin, it was worth $1,000. So that was like
Mhm.
what, 2018, about that time. I saw it go up to 20,000, but that's when I wasn't an investor. I didn't have that mindset. So what can people do to get started? Where's that barrier, right? For a lot of people. How would you recommend somebody who, maybe they're in high school or they're in college, they want to participate? What would you tell them to do if you were giving them advice? Not telling them what to buy, but how would
Mhm.
you help guide somebody?
Yeah, I think I can answer that question without necessarily telling them what to buy. And that's actually pretty simple, right? So, number one, educate yourself, right? Number two, follow content creators like yourself, right? Crypto Moose or myself, which are in the educational space, right? There's a lot of different types of content creators. So, understanding the types of content creators, I think, is huge. Whether you're following an educational person, whether you're following a moon boy, whether you're following, a loyalist, whatever the case is, just understand the type of content that you're consuming. But over all of that, you have to be confident in your own abilities. And to be confident in your own abilities, you have to do your own research. So I know it's something that everybody says, but I heavily believe in it. And there's plenty of different people that will always tell you what they want you to hear. And if you don't understand that very early on, that like this space right now is brand new and that everybody is trying to get their own project up and running and they all have their own incentives to do that, then the better you'll be off. So that's probably my best thing right there is, educate yourself, make sure that you dive into educational content, and then just become a part of the community. Sign up on Discord, jump in the Discords, ask questions, jump on Twitter, post people or post with people, follow people, retweet, tag, do all that stuff because again, it all goes back towards being a community, right? And that's one of the main reasons why I joined Cardano specifically is because of the education, their peer reviewed research approach. And then again, the fact that they're building here for the long run and we're not essentially backed by any VC or capital funding, right? Which is also probably why Cardano doesn't get a lot of the love that all these other projects get. But I think that's
Yeah.
why it's an ecosystem that will be built to last.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's probably like I wouldn't say I'm a Cardano maximalist or whatever they want to say, right? I would say I'm more of a Bitcoin maxi because Bitcoin in terms of cryptocurrencies lasting, I see that just being very strategic if you're going to plan for the long term. It's a little bit boring, Bitcoin, but at least with Cardano, there's so much that's going to be built on top of it. Using Cardano, I think, at least from my perspective, if you haven't started but you want to learn, I think you should dive in a little bit, like make some transactions. I thought NFTs were a joke until my friend sent me one, and I'm like, I kind of like this ghost chain. He sent me a ghost chain, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
generous. Um, then I ended up minting the Boss Cats kind of cheap. That was before smart contracts were implemented. So you kind of had to do things on the manual side. But I was doing some math. These are the odds of receiving a gold bank manager. So
That
0.00023%. If my
that's a
math's
lot of
right, 10
zeros.
divided by 52. A lot of
Yeah, that's a
zeros.
lot of
So
zeros.
yeah, maybe I would hold on to it if I got one as well. I think that would be pretty cool. One thing I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
um, what are your thoughts on ISPOs? Because to me, I think ISPOs, I'll just give a quick example.
Hmm.
ISPO is an initial stake pool offering.
Hmm.
For Cardano, it's proof of stake. So you can delegate your coins into a stake pool and you get rewarded with supply every 5 days, which is epic. So it's compounding on the compounding. Um, but with ISPOs, you can literally hold, uh, you know, your tokens on a hardware wallet and delegate to an ISPO. What are your thoughts on them? Because I don't think Ethereum's doing that. And really, what I'm getting at is why is Ethereum? Why do I feel like Ethereum's up here and Cardano's down here? It doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't.
So imagine a marathon where Ethereum essentially got a 5 minute head start. That's what we're essentially seeing being played out right now. It's not necessarily that Ethereum is better because there's more liquidity there, right? And I'm not knocking Ethereum at all because they essentially laid the foundation for what's actually being built on Cardano, right? In terms of DeFi, NFT, smart contracts, like without Ethereum leading the way and without Ethereum making breakthroughs as well as making blunders, right? We would not have anything to iterate off of in Cardano. That said, Bitcoin, think of it as the grandpa, right? Then you've got Ethereum, who is the offspring of Bitcoin, right? Where you now introduce smart contracts, layer two scaling solutions, things like that, right? And then Ethereum, let's say, has a child, which I would say is Cardano, right? Where within each generation, you're getting smarter, you're getting better, you're getting faster, right? So Bitcoin is first gen, Ethereum is second gen, and Cardano's third gen. Just like, and I don't want to sound rude, but like when we're growing up, our parents are teaching us how to operate in the natural world, right? How to interact with society. But then you get to a certain point where like you begin to start to tell your parents about certain things, right? And now I'm sure your parents can learn a lot from you about crypto. Whereas, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you would have not known anything and you would have been solely reliant on what they're teaching you, right? So I think that what we have in the natural sense also applies to crypto in the sense that as we continue to develop and as we get new generational waves of crypto, we are continuing to iterate and get better. And so, what does that actually mean for the future of Cardano, right? Is that we could have another blockchain that's a fourth gen, right? That comes along that learns from everything that Cardano already has, which includes ISPOs, and perfects that even more, as crazy as it sounds like, because obviously within the Cardano ecosystem, a lot of people think that, what we have going on right now is amazing, which it is, because we get a lot of things that people within the Ethereum space don't necessarily have. But we could definitely see other blockchains that learn from some of these shortcomings that Cardano has had, right? In terms of how they develop and even with the approach. I think that we could be even more methodical. And again, it's not to say that Cardano's perfect because it's not. We've had our bumps and bruises along the way, but we've shown people that we are learning and that we're iterating over the Ethereum blockchain. So again, I think it's a matter of time. I would give it about 3, 4, at most 5 years until people really understand the power of Cardano, because right now we're going through the Voltaire era, right? Where we're now finally getting to the end of Cardano's development, where we're now going to be talking about decentralization and on-chain governance, right? Which again is something that Ethereum wanted to do. But like imagine Ethereum, right? They were hot right out of the gate. And Charles was actually a part of that effort. And I think that's why he kind of split out to go do his own thing with Cardano, is because he understood, okay, I don't need to rush. I don't need to be the first guy out the sprint. But what I do need to do is be the last guy, to come in and essentially do things right. So again, it's not about who is first to market. It's about who's going to be here to stay over the long term. And I think that Cardano has placed themselves very well to where once things are actually fully functioning without any additional governance or any additional development going on, that it's inevitable we will catch up. And there will be a day where I think people call it the flippening, right? Where Ethereum could potentially flip Bitcoin, but then I think right behind that, Cardano will come in and flip the both of them. It's just a matter of time, in my personal opinion.
That would be epic too. Wow. That was really well put, by the way. I like that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I always see, I guess, Bitcoin as different than these all purpose based blockchains, but Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I see ADA as, yeah, kind of like, I guess you could say the son of Ethereum in a way. But
We've learned
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot.
that
We've
was
learned a
really
lot
well
from
put.
Ethereum. Yeah, I mean, and kind of
Yeah,
going back, if you still want to, talk a little bit about this, but the
yeah,
ISPO
yeah.
process, right? I'm not sure if you were there. Well, it sounds like you were. If you were here at Bitcoin at $1,000, you were definitely here during the ICO craze in 2017,
Oh
2018
yes.
on Ethereum, right? And look how that ended up for a lot of people, right? Was with SEC securities issues, right? In terms of how things were administered and how tokens were distributed. So again, the fact that Cardano was able to learn and iterate off of that to provide people with a mechanism to essentially participate and earn tokens without necessarily locking up or giving away their keys, right, is like a win-win. Not only can you participate in the early stage of these projects, but you don't also have to turn over your actual keys or your actual assets, because the way that staking works on Cardano is that you keep control of your assets. All you're doing is giving away your staking key to whoever is actually, using it for the ISPO. So just another piece I wanted to add there.
No, I like that. And it just reminds me, like, whenever I go to the bank, because I'm from Canada, right? I literally had a card that wasn't working, like a debit card,
Mm,
and I had to go into the bank, get a new card, and I had to wait because it was over the weekend. At least with cryptos, you can own your own assets, and that's just one area. Do you think? Do you think the everyday person will be using more crypto within even 2, 3 years, or do you think it's going to take more time? Or do you think it's already happening? What are your thoughts? Like, do you think that, like, what I notice is when I start talking about crypto, people just start backing off and they're kind of scared or they think I'm crazy. They don't get it. And if you do try to explain to them, then they're like, oh, maybe he does know what's going on, but I have no idea what he's talking about. So what are your
mm.
thoughts? Like, do you think crypto is mainstream now, or do you think we're not there yet? Because I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're even close yet.
I agree with you to an extent. I think we are on the cusp of adoption. Now, granted, think about how the internet works right now, right? Right now, you and I are literally having a conversation hundreds of miles away, if not thousands of miles away. And to us, it
Yeah.
feels instant. It really feels like you're literally right in front of me, right? And there are so many layers here at work that you and I don't understand. And it's not to say that you're not smart or that I'm not smart, right? But I don't need to necessarily understand how the sausage is made to be able to consume it, right? And so the same thing with the internet. I don't necessarily have to know about, the TCP IP layers and how, the software and the hardware meshes together. I just need to know, okay, hey, there are other platforms, right, that utilize the internet that allow for you and I to communicate in this sense. So I think we're going to see the same thing eventually come with crypto. And like we talked about earlier, MELD, I think, is going to be one of those projects that allows that to happen. But what I think is going to happen is people are going to be interacting with crypto on a day-to-day basis without even realizing it, right? So things, for example, like driver's licenses, right? I recently had to go update my driver's license and had to get like this real ID, which is what they call it in the US. It's like this driver's license with the star at the top right-hand corner that allows you to like
Okay.
travel at all of these airports without necessarily having to carry a passport anymore, right? That said, I'm looking at all these different systems that we have, right? And crypto, I think, is going to be a system for digital identities, right? So in the future, I would assume that I'd be able to get some kind of identity for myself, and that'll be tied to an NFT. What blockchain that lives on, that's beyond me, right? But I think that the
Yeah.
technology is here to stay, and the real world use cases, right, are there's just so many of them. Owning your own rights when it comes to music, right? Deeds for houses to make sure that there's no tampering of documents and sale history, right? These are just very, very basics. And again, I think that over the course of time, the use cases are going to grow. And again, this is just the beginning. So I think that people will inevitably have to adopt crypto. And whether or not they know that whatever platforms they're using are using a crypto backend or a blockchain or cryptography backend, doesn't necessarily matter, right? But because we're early adopters, we are making the sausage. We are setting up the TCP/IP layers, right? We're the ones doing all this right now. But I promise you, whenever we get the common people that are not necessarily raising their eyebrow at crypto right now to jump in, they're going to be interacting with crypto without even knowing about it.
I like that. And I agree with that too. There's so many ways of going about it, right? But I did do a video recently talking about the difference differences between layer ones and twos, right? So you have, for example, the Lightning Network, which runs on top of Bitcoin, and you have all these side chains, right? So the idea is like the layer ones are the plumbing and the foundation or whatever you will. Layer twos are going to be what people actually use, like a phone. I don't know how the internet works, but I know how YouTube works. And then beyond YouTube, there might be something else. Do you think, though, that, for example, and this is just speculation, do you think that Cardano and Ethereum will be the plumbing that runs these layer twos and threes that people use? How far do you think that goes? You know what I mean? Do you think it's going to be until like the layer sixes? Because we don't know what's possible, but maybe we don't need that. Like, you know what I mean? There's so much to
Yeah,
think about. What
that's
are
a
your thoughts? Do you think we're almost there? Or do you think we still need to make it easier, so to speak? Because that's what it does. It makes that gap easier for people to use.
yeah, and I agree with that. So I think that's a tough one to answer. We'll definitely need whatever the layer ones are, right? So I think that in the long term, we'll still see Ethereum. We're still going to see Cardano. We're still going to see Bitcoin, and they all have their own strengths, right? It's almost like a tool set at the house. If you're doing woodworking, you can't necessarily use a hammer to cut a piece of wood, right? You need a saw.
No.
And so Cardano might be the saw, right? Ethereum might be the hammer, and Bitcoin might be the ruler, whatever the case is, right? So I think that everybody has their own place. And as long as the blockchains themselves know, okay, hey, we're good at throughput, we can process things to finality very quickly, or, we can do things in a secure fashion, right? I.e. Cardano, then they just kind of have to just stay in their lane. Now, in terms of how many layers we can expect, that's a tough one to answer, man, because I find that, like you said, as we have more layers, we get a lot more abstraction. And as we get a lot more abstraction, we get things that are done a little bit more easily, right? Like you take a look at traditional Web2 coding back in the day when people were, doing everything and writing out the HTML code compared to what we have now with all these different frameworks, right? JavaScript,
Mm.
TypeScript, all these different things that essentially abstract the very simple basics, right? It makes life easier. So hopefully we have, additional layers running on top of these solid protocols already. But in terms of how many, man, I think that's very hard to predict. But the more, hopefully the better. And again, hopefully it all does the same thing, which is drive adoption to crypto.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think about how big the internet is because at least me personally, I remember I used to have a flip phone. I didn't have the smartphone. I remember when we had the first digital cameras, but all that being said, I'm thinking about the internet now. Like I have a fiber optic plugged in my computer now talking to you. But how many of us think about at the bottom of oceans the internet cables that are running through, in giving the internet access and data to the world, right? How much more valuable do you think that is today compared to like 20 years ago, right? So now you can kind of own a piece of that. And I don't think we really know what that means. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but like we don't really know what it means to own an all purpose based decentralized blockchain, right? Like what's going to happen if you own that?
I personally think investing in the layer ones right now, or as some people call them, layer zero, you know,
Yeah,
potato, potato, whatever.
yeah, we
I
should call
think
them layer zero.
well, investing in the foundation, right? I think everybody understands that. I think investing in the foundation is what's going to be key. Now, granted, like you mentioned earlier, we can have completely different ecosystems built on top of Cardano, completely different ecosystems built on top of Ethereum, etc. And then those ecosystems can have additional ecosystems built there. But if you remove the base foundation, none of those other ecosystems will function, right? So that's my kind of thesis right there initially as to why I continue to invest in a lot of these base foundations or these base layers. But I definitely think that the opportunity, right, lies at the forefront of the technology. So, for example, you could have invested back in MySpace, which was one of the first social media platforms, right? But you look at
Yeah.
MySpace now, and MySpace is, it's kind of forgotten about. A lot of people don't even understand what MySpace is now. And so staying at the very forefront, developing is key. We need that. But at the very bottom of that, right? MySpace, Instagram, Facebook, all these things need the internet to run. So again, I think investing at that very bottom layer is a very safe bet. Again, not making this financial advice, but just again, my personal thesis as to what I'm investing in.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I wanted to hit on, because
Hmm.
we were talking about NFTs slightly, I think NFTs personally, that is the one area of the world because music is so big. I listen on the radio, you have Spotify, that's a whole other topic, but music is the one place that you could solve the problem of people not ripping off artists and actually owning something and having like NFTs are so valuable in the audio space. Do you agree with that? Like, I think that the moment Apple starts, or whoever it is, if these record companies start minting NFTs, that blockchain, whatever blockchain it's going to be on, is going to go nuts. Because I remember LimeWire. I remember when you could first download music, and the idea of actually adding royalties to it is amazing too, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that? How big do you think music NFTs are going to be big? Because I think it's going to be like people will be abashed. It'll be amazing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I share the same sentiment. I think NFTs, as it pertains to music, really again puts the ownership back into the creator's hands, right? So I think it'll even apply to like content like what you and I are creating right now, YouTube videos, right? If you and I put the time and the effort to create a video, go back in and edit it, and we can sell it or have it be viewed as an NFT to where if anybody else shares it, we're then getting a part of the royalties if it's monetized, right? It only makes sense. So again, I think we're at the very bottom here. And for music, it's definitely going to revolutionize the space. And so I do want to mention the Noom project, which is a decentralized music platform. They've got a few artists right now, but they're essentially working through that process, right? Like they're going to be essentially minting NFTs. There's also the Six City platform, the Six City project, right? Which they've already released music as NFTs on Cardano. Now, whether or not they're earning royalties off of that, I'm not necessarily sure. But the fact that we're now able to put the power back in people's hands through the use of that, I think is huge. So I'm very bullish on NFTs again. That's just another use case. But yeah, I think it's got a long way to go. And once these giants understand that, which are Spotify, you know, all these other platforms, iTunes, they're either going to have to get with it or get left behind. So I could see Apple, Spotify, all these other platforms adopting NFTs, and then essentially giving the creators what they deserve in terms of royalties.
Nice. Yeah, I was even thinking about that too. I got some of the ADA handles, like I own like pop music, rap music. So Apple, if you're interested, $2 million. 2 million ADA. If they send me 2 million ADA, oh, they can have it. At least two
Yeah.
million, right?
Nah, you're good, man. You're good. You're good. Go ahead.
All right, all right. Anything else specifically you wanted to talk about? Anything that's going on in this space? I know the FTX stuff happened. I
Hmm.
don't even know how to cover that because it's still ongoing. What are your thoughts? I guess we should talk about it. FTX, do you know what's happening? What are your thoughts? Do you think everything that we're seeing is true?
Yeah, there's a ton of speculation, so I don't want to speak in terms of anything being final because none of it is final, right? Now, granted, there
Yeah,
are some things that we know clearly happened, right? There was a lot of people's money that is no longer available. That's a fact. We don't have to question
sad.
that, and it is. So my heart goes out to all those people, but I think it really goes to show why we need DeFi and why we need regulation on these on ramps to crypto, right? The blockchain itself doesn't need regulation. The blockchain regulates itself. Blockchain is transparent. The blockchain shows everything that we need. Who doesn't show us that are these big exchanges, right? And so I think that's where the regulation needs to be focused on, not necessarily the blockchain or the cryptography space itself, because there's no issues getting accurate information within crypto. And I actually think that's why some people are hesitant to get into cryptos because they don't want to be exposed in that sense, right? But when it comes back to FTX, man, I mean, it's an unfortunate situation. Hopefully we can get the facts. Hopefully people can get at least something back, right? It looks like they've at least found certain assets that they can hopefully seize and, kind of
Yeah,
liquidate to give people a little bit of a sense that they're kind of being made whole, right? Because I don't necessarily think that all of the money will be back. Hopefully I can be proven wrong in that sense. But that's my 2 cents. I mean, I honestly try to stay out of the speculation too much until the facts are there. Um, but yeah, man, my heart goes out to those people, and hopefully you weren't impacted. I know I personally was not using FTX, so it didn't have any impacts on me or anybody that I know within the crypto space. But I do know that there were a lot of people that were impacted by it.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate because personally, I haven't been impacted by it. I have nothing on online exchanges. I have a little bit in Coinbase. That's about it. But I have like 8 different hardware wallets. I'm a crypto addict, so I mean, there's no issue on that. But for people wanting to get into crypto, it is difficult because you have a place like FTX where you can more easily get into crypto, but then you also have the fact that now they have the authority and you don't, right? Because authority over your crypto is what really matters for security. So crypto is complex enough. We have to make it easier for individuals to get into the market. Um, when when do you think that will be easier for people? Do you think that's going to be when like Twitter allows people to get crypto easier? And the other thing is, like from your perspective, when do you think it will be like a one-step process for people to buy crypto and feel safe? What do you think has to happen?
So I think there's a few different factors. Obviously, platforms like Twitter adopting crypto will push us in the right direction, and it'll probably, help us to catch up a little bit, right? But again, that's a centralized entity. I think that
Mhm.
focusing on a lot of these platforms that are built on top of the blockchain layer itself is key, right? So getting adoption into platforms like MELD, decentralized exchanges like Minswap, Wing Riders, the ones that we talked about all before, are what's essentially key, right? Interacting with the actual blockchain itself, I think, is what's important. But anything that we can get at this point, man, I think will help sentiment. Obviously, we're in the bear market. People are kind of depressed. We might see some capitulation happening here very shortly, but again,
Yeah.
we should have a different mindset because this is not the first cycle. It's not the second cycle. It's not the third cycle. We're getting ready to go on the fourth, right? So if history is a teacher of anything, it's that this is a grand opportunity right now and that the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, so I don't think there's anything else to cover. We covered quite a bit here. So, yeah, you
Yeah,
good?
no.
You good on everything?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for reaching out and thank you for setting this up. I definitely appreciate it. I watch your content as well, and I want to say keep up the tutorials, the ledger tutorials, the treasure tutorials, the updates on Meld,
Yeah.
Cornucopias, and all these other projects, and just continue to expand. Because I noticed one thing with your channel is that you cover outside the Cardano ecosystem. So that's something that I aim to do. Hopefully, over the course of the next year or so. But as I mentioned before, I try to just take one step at a time. I don't want to kind of overload my plate. So once I'm very comfortable with Cardano and how things work here, I'm going to kind of open my horizons up and then kind of start to look out at other platforms. And you can definitely bet that, Crypto Moose will be on my list of people that I want to collab with to kind of get that inside information on those other platforms.
Yeah, definitely. I've been a little more active in the Discord. I'm trying to be more active. I think a good pro tip is to get into the Discords, get into Twitter. I've always kind of evaded those, but how about you? How do you think people can get access to information better? Do you think Twitter's number one with that?
Right now, I think so. Now, is it the best information? Is it the most accurate information? That's something that you kind of have to answer for yourself because I do see a lot of people just kind of posting things that don't necessarily add benefit, right? So it's a medium, which is great, but there's other mediums as well. So I personally like YouTube. I also like, ironically, it's
Yeah.
called Medium, right? Where people post their articles and blog posts like that. So you've got projects that are essentially posting documents, and these are formal documents, right? It's not just like a little article that nobody put any thought into. But those are the types of content that I personally like to consume, right? Reading white papers. That's what I like to do in my spare time. As boring as it sounds, like I'll spend a
That,
Saturday morning or afternoon reading white papers, right? And
you're like
that's
the
really where I try to.
Buffett of crypto, just reading every
I'm
day.
I'm
I
trying.
did
I'm
that with
trying.
Mel. I'm a visual guy. I learn a lot easier on YouTube. I like your content, obviously. I watched BitBoy, Crypto Crow, those guys, but like, yeah, like getting into the white paper, that's everything you need to know. I read for the first time basically on Cardano was the MELD white paper, and I was like, this is sweet, right? And it turned out better than what I thought. Who would have known? But I also got into others that didn't work out. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
And that's what it's all about. If everybody could pick winners, none of us would be here. We'd all be on the beach in the Bahamas. Well, maybe not the Bahamas, but somewhere else where
Oh, I don't know.
there's
I
there's
don't
not a
know.
lot of.
That's right. Yeah, I probably don't want to go there. People will be like, he must be in with FTX. Who knows?
Right, right, right. He's got too much money right now. So,
That's
again,
yeah,
man,
yeah, yeah,
go ahead. You can
absolutely.
finish your thought.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, that's all I really wanted to say. I just think really educate yourselves, right? Like I think that's the most important part about this. Really come up with your own conclusions, right? Like that's what I do whenever I'm working on this and just doing more content. I want people to really try things out. That's what I think matters. So
I completely agree. I completely agree. Again, thank you so much for bringing me on, and this was an awesome conversation, man. Definitely have to do
yeah,
something like this more often, where we're just kind of just talking, super naturally, and I definitely enjoyed it. I definitely got to talk about things that like I didn't even think about before. So thank you for bringing that out of me, man.
yeah, yeah, and definitely we want to see the comments down below. Comment what other content you would like to see. Comment which blockchains you would like to see on DappCentral on Crypto Moose.
For sure.
So that's all I have. So
Well, thank you again, Crypto Moose, Mr.
absolutely.
Bouchard. It was a pleasure. And
Yes,
again, I look
agreed.
forward to collabing with you in the near future. All right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for this interview. Again, thank you guys for sticking around. I appreciate your time. And again, Crypto Moose, go ahead and make sure to give him a follow or a subscribe if you're on YouTube. I'll go ahead and leave the links to his socials down in the description below. That said, you guys take it easy. Have a good evening.